What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Dream Firm Spotlight. My name is Tyler S. Clark, co-founder of Dream Firms, where we help you to create the accounting, bookkeeping, or tax firm of your dreams by installing systems that are cutting edge and ultimately allow you to work with the people you want to work with. So to help you to do just that, sometimes it's important to realize the things that you're doing not so well so that you can do more of what you actually want and the things that truly work. So I'm going to be covering today the 7 most common mistakes that accounting firms make. And the very first mistake that is all too common is what is known as not taking your own medicine, or as the French like to say, you got to drink your own champagne. The accountants of the world sometimes, too often, put their own tax returns on extension. They don't have their books done by the end of the month. They don't take the advice that they would give their clients as it relates to profitability and pricing. And they want to give the advice, but sometimes they don't want to take it. It'd be the equivalent of going to a marketer and saying like, okay, I want to work with you, but I can't see you producing content. I don't see you running any form of ads. I don't see you doing webinars. And I don't. Are you a marketer? You'd be like, well, the thing with marketers is you can see and validate all that. With accountants, you can't really see and validate whether or not they're taking their own medicine. But this is important. And the reason it's such a critical mistake is because when you are selling, you've got to believe what you're doing is valuable. And if you are not doing it yourself, how can you actually want to sell it? And you might say, oh, well, I'm small, and so it doesn't really apply to me. If it applies for the big boys, it's got to apply for the little guys too. So if it's from the large, you know the small, from the small, you know the large, Sun Tzu, Art of War, please, you've got good habits in the beginning. They scale with you for a lifetime. That also helps you close smaller clients as well when you go and you can show them the importance of this even when they're small. So number 1, make sure you take your own medicine. Second most common mistake, paralysis by analysis. Look, in the information age, it is very easy to get lost in the data because there's an endless supply of it. As accountants, you love data, but so much of your decision-making in your accounting firm is not going to be based on a lot of data. And I know that may sound strange, but there isn't always tons of data available for even the most important decisions that you have to make, whether that's related to choosing software, whether that's related to your pricing structure. There isn't always data available. By the time you have perfect data, the opportunity will have passed you by. So yes, you can stay where you are and wait for more and more and more and more information. But by the time you have all of the information, the thing you are analyzing is not as advantageous as it once was. And I'll give you a great example. If I had told you 15 years ago, right, you need a website, you should start producing content, you should really be focused on keywords, Google, and SEO. And you're like, I don't really know if I see that as I'm going to wait, and you're going to wait, and you're going to keep waiting and keep waiting. 5 years goes by, it's 5 times, 100 times more competitive than it was, rather than just doing nothing. A lot of people think coaching is about making the right decision. It's not. Coaching is about getting you to make faster decisions so you can experience the benefit or drawback of those decisions sooner and then make smarter and better decisions from those experiences. So again, there's no perfect decision. There's no perfect data sets. Once you have a good understanding of what decision you're making, why you're making it, and have as much data as you can reasonably accumulate to make it. Because if you just delay it, you're just paralyzed by analyzing an infinite set of data, and you're never going to get anywhere like that. Third most common mistake is SOS. SOS, right? Save our souls. But in today's fast-paced economy, and for entrepreneurs, it stands for shiny object syndrome. Shiny object syndrome means you're constantly looking for the next greatest thing. And what you need to focus more on are the core fundamentals. When you focus on the core fundamentals and you stay just ruthlessly consistent with them, you will see results. I will also change this one, sort of like 3A and 3B. There's kind of like two ways to think about shiny object syndrome. You can chase the latest and greatest marketing craze, right? A lot of people just rename things and it's just the same thing in a slightly different package. And you get all enamored by it, new software tools, you throw out the old one and you realize this one has a totally different set of problems. And you're constantly just treading water because you're just trying to get to new things all the time instead of just achieving a deep level of understanding and appreciation and getting a higher level of expertise and mastery in the things that you are working with or have in place already. But the 3B is not necessarily shiny object syndrome, it's shiny certification syndrome. And this is also imposter syndrome, right? Like you're not good enough. So you're constantly chasing something to validate that you're an expert, or something that you can put on your wall that says you're an expert, that you can point to and say, you know, you should trust me because I have these letters, or because, you know, this company that certifies everyone who pays the money and passes a really basic test, now you should trust me. It's just a waste of time. And to give you a perfect example, last night on our group coaching call with our annual mastermind clients, this topic of conversation comes up, right? And I want to be clear, I'm always in favor of education, right? Education is the great equalizer. You should always want to educate yourself. But if you believe the certification prevents you from offering, selling, barring legal requirements, which there are a few, if you believe that's what you need to do it, it's just not true. And the truth is the market doesn't know what that certification is. They don't care. If you bring it up, they're not even going to probably appreciate or know it, or you just got to talk more about them than about yourself. So don't allow yourself to get distracted by shiny objects or just new packaged things or certifications to try and validate your expertise. It's just not going to work. It's a mistake. Number 4, death by 1,000 software subscriptions. So I'll tell you a very small story, but when I was first really launching what the company is today, I started out with something known as the 100K challenge. Pretty cool name. I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. And essentially I offered a whole bunch of expertise, training, one-on-one experience in exchange for a software subscription. And I was just trying, I was just experimenting. I made a decision with the best information available to me. I said, okay, this software tool is great. I love it. Accountants love software. I bet I could get them to buy this, and I bet I could get them to implement it, and they would use it and they would love it. And so I put everything together based on those assumptions, and I tested it out, and it worked really well. I ended up winning this fancy award for selling all this software in a really short period of time. And it really was one of the first major accolades in my career once I had sold my own accounting firm, which I used that software to help build. So point is I sold well over 150 software subscriptions in, again, probably like 150 days, like not bad. And what's interesting about that, I haven't sold one of them for 2.5 years. And slowly over time, I would see the commission report dwindle. You know, lose an account every couple of months, you'd lose a couple of accounts. And I was like, oh, you know, that's a shame. There's so much that this software can do, but that's a shame that they're not sticking with it, or that they're not finding a way to push it forward and get more people to see what we either help them to build or what they build inside of it. And, but what's fascinating about that is I have one person left as an affiliate. One. Out of all 150 people I signed up, I have one left. That one person, you may recognize, her name is Shanita. She won the ClickFunnels 2 Comma Club Award. She added $1 million to her firm. $1 million to her firm through ClickFunnels. And so maybe what we need is to not constantly switch and change, but stay focused and on the path like Shanita did. Because literally the only person who stayed the path made $1 million. And 99% of everyone else, I guarantee, didn't reach that same level of success. Pretty wild when you think about it, isn't it? Number 5, most common mistake. No accountability for the entrepreneurial accountants. And there is two ways that I would like to approach this. So when you are an entrepreneur, generally speaking, unless you are partnered with your spouse, and even if you are alone. You have, generally speaking, no third-party opinions or perspectives that you can genuinely rely on that could help you. Because if you are an entrepreneur, you are surrounded by people who are typically employees. You might have one or two people that are side hustlers. They might be entrepreneurs themselves, but they may not even necessarily be very successful. They may not have the level of success that you're looking for. And so even when you have those conversations with them, you can't really appreciate the advice that they're giving to you because you haven't really done it, right? You haven't taken your own medicine. I don't really see your success, so I'm not so sure I even want to discuss what I've got going on. So it's important that you are accountable to someone outside of yourself, ideally some form of a mentor, a coach, someone, a colleague that has a more successful firm, right? Like there are so many ways to just have a structured relationship. Sometimes it's free, sometimes it's paid. I think the paid ones are better because there's more skin in the game. There's more skin from them, more skin from you. You have a much higher standard of actually meeting and showing up prepared for those meetings because you don't want to disappoint it and you want to get a return on your investment. And so now you've got this real desire to improve, and you have someone to lean on to help you to improve. Because if you just stay trapped up here and you have no way to validate the decisions you're getting ready to make, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? It could set you back months or years making bad decisions, whereas you could accelerate so much faster with a meaningful third-party opinion that holds you accountable to doing the things that you say you're going to do. So that's one way of approaching it. And I'll show you the other way, which again is like, if you're accountable to your clients, be truly accountable to them. So when I ran my firm, I went on, hundreds of sales calls. Some of them weren't great, happens, right? Some of them were great, but there was one thing that kept coming up, and it was related to this conversation of accountability. They would say, well, Tyler, I don't know why you're going to be different than the firm that I have right now. Or I don't know, you sound great, your pricing's good, your services are better, right? Like everything was lining up, but they're like, I'm not really sure. And I was like, but you got hit with a penalty, right? Like that happened. And they're like, yeah, it did. But like, my understanding is that happens with almost every firm. And I'm like, does it? And that kept being a recurring theme. And I would lose sales because people wouldn't be able to understand that wouldn't happen with us. I would just be like, yeah, just trust me. And they'd be like, but they say the same thing. They say, just trust me. And finally, I was like, you know what? I guarantee that if you get hit with a penalty while you are under the guidance of our firm, I will personally pay that penalty for you. And when I say I pierced the veil, right? Like I immediately got through to the decision-making part of the person's brain because it's like, yeah, it sounds good. Not that, accounting is accounting. And they were like, excuse me, what did you just say? I was like, we will stand by our word. I guarantee that I will put that in writing right now if you sign up with our firm today. And they were like, deal. I was like, whoa, oh my God, I can't believe that worked. Right? Like I was like, whoa, and then every presentation after that, I would say that. And anytime I spoke with a business owner who'd been hit with a penalty similar to my situation or a problem that they felt they did not cause in any way, shape, or form, were extremely proactive and responsive and pushing something forward, I would win that business literally 10 out of 10, like every single time. Because I was doing something, I was standing by a word or a promise that other people refused to do. I was making an offer that was more irresistible than other people. Now, two things happen, okay, in relation to this guarantee, okay? One, there's, of course, conditions to any guarantee. This is the way, right? There's unconditional guarantees and then there's conditions. This is a conditional guarantee. So the way a conditional guarantee works is you've got to meet the conditions in order for the guarantee to be valid. And so the conditions of this guarantee is if you do not respond to our inquiries, if you are unresponsive, if you do not send us what we need to assist you, in a timely fashion and you get hit with a penalty, we're not going to pay for it. It's black and white, right? And we had a great tracking system at the time for correspondence, right? So one client disappears off the face of the earth for months, gets hit with a penalty, shows up and tries to take advantage of multiple calls, emails, texts. You have to pay this penalty. It's in the agreement. I'm like, no, we absolutely do not. And you will no longer be a client of our firm, and we're okay with that. So one, it allows you to disengage from bad clients. However, second situation happens. Second situation is it's tax season. Client emails us, and I'll never forget her name, Tanya Martinez, La Dominica market in Camden, New Jersey. What a great client. And she says, hey, she had like a UEZ credit under impoverished zone credit. She's like, hey, we got to get this, we got to get this form or this credit taken care of. She emails us about it. And we're like, hey, we're on top of it. Appreciate it. Tax season didn't get filed into the workflow system. It was just a stupid email. That's why email's terrible, generally speaking. But we dropped the ball. She reminded us about it too, and we dropped the ball. Right? Twice she brought it up, and we still didn't do it. She got with a penalty, and it was spicy. It was like, like $900. And I was like, oh. I went to my staff accountant, and I was like, we're gonna have to pay this, aren't we? He's like, yeah, we totally messed that up. And I was like, it happens. And so I email her. I was like, Tanya, I'm so sorry this happened. We're 100% going to pay the penalty. And she emails me back and she's like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, of course. I mean, it was clearly our fault. Like, we're really sorry. And we hope you're still a client, like, we really hope so. And she's like, I would never work with another accounting firm ever again. She referred more business to us than any other client. So the work she referred to us more than covered the $900, way more. So my point with accountability is, if you are willing to make any form of a promise, set conditions to that promise. It'll hold you accountable to being able to reach the promise, and it'll force the client to also be accountable to you as well. And that's a really beneficial thing. And it is arguably the biggest mistake of all, because it's a very easy thing to be able to put in place. So number 6, no margins. This plays a little bit into point number 1 about how you can not take your own medicine, but I will oftentimes ask people when they come onto calls with me, I'll say, great, what's your profit margin over the last month? And either they won't know, or they'll tell me what they made in revenue. And I go, okay, so was that your revenue or your profit? And they go, like, they kind of like act like it's the same thing. And I'm like, they're clearly not. And so the reason I bring up no margins is it's directly tied back to price. And it's directly tied back to taking your own medicine and drinking your own champagne and just knowing, what do I need to be able to charge to create leverage in my business? Because if you're only charging what it requires for you to do the work and just survive, you'll never be able to thrive. You'll never be able to have a blossoming team. You'll never even be able to have a healthy cushion of a couple of months of expenses, ideally significantly more than that. If you have no margins, you can't even build a business that's worth to sell. You just have to protect margins at all costs. And if you can't you got to do the math, right? Like, for someone else to do this role, the majority of what I'm doing, how much time is it approximately taking me? If I doubled the time required for someone to do the work, because they're not going to be me, they're not going to be as efficient, how much would I need to pay that person? Now, they're not going to need the same salary as you. You're not the owner, and you may be able to use some outsourcing options, some lower level talent, and not lower level in the sense that, they're not going to be able to become more valuable over time, but, there are tasks that aren't going to require a $100,000 a year person to do them. So what are those? How do I make sure that they get off my plate? How much would those be? And then if I needed to have a client manager to review their work, if I needed to have someone who's maybe more on the relationship side, you just have to make sure that you know what the margins need to be so that you can still take money, deliver on the promise, and not be tied to the delivery of the promise. But most people never do the math for it, which is crazy to me for accountants. Like, of all the things that you should be using your skill set for, I'd argue that should be number one. And you got to do that for yourself. And then when people talk about value and advisory, like, there's nothing more valuable than having a business that has healthy margins. It's literally the most valuable thing, because there can be no value without margins. Number 7, the final one here. It's no secret that the talent pool is shrinking. It's no secret that a lot of people no longer want to be in the profession, and less people want to come into the profession. So the 7th most common mistake is being overworked and understaffed. Overworked means you are allowing for scope creep. I keep one thing on my desk as a reminder at all times, because I remember what it was like, just as I'm sure a lot of people listening to this feel like right now, to do unpaid work. And when my former coach, I love him to death, but when my former coach said this to me, I drew this, right? And what he said to me was, if you do not know the line between acceptable and unacceptable, everything becomes acceptable. It's acceptable to work on the weekends. It's acceptable to have no margins. It's acceptable to be understaffed. It's acceptable to miss out on the things that matter the most to you. It all becomes acceptable to you. So defining what you are willing to do and for what price that genuinely excites you and allows you to deliver on your promises, and ideally delegate the delivery of those promises, not immediately, but in the not so distant future, or now, if you've got the ability, like, do it. Because that's the whole point, is like, we have these experiences from our past that prevent us from doing the obvious things, making the smart decisions with our firms and with our businesses, with our clients, to improve them. And if you're overworked, it's normally because you took on too many clients. You didn't actually plan for your capacity. You took on too many clients at a too low of a price, and now you feel like, oh, I have to keep doing this. And it's like, for who and for what? Why? You don't. There's a great book called Necessary Pruning. I bring it up probably like every other week on group coaching. The rose bush cannot grow unless you trim it back. Your firm cannot grow unless you intentionally trim it back. My most successful client, he's on the verge of adding $1 million to his firm since starting to work with us. $1 million. Religiously, this man trims his client base every quarter. And he's starting to do it like every month because he's growing so fast now. Because you've got to create the capacity for higher level clients that are more profitable to the business. You just have to. And once you do that, right? Like if you're overworked and then you are no longer overworked and now you have the profit margins, well, you're not going to be understaffed, but the only reason you'd go back into overworked is you're terrified to hire people. And most people are terrified to do that because they buy into this idea that there's no talent available, like nobody wants to work. It's complete nonsense. I guarantee you can find amazing talent right now. It's not that hard. It's really not. The second part is they had a bad hiring experience before, right? I always like to say, don't let the bad thing burn you twice. If you work with a bad bookkeeper off of Fiverr, are you really not going to work with a great accounting firm? Doesn't make any sense. If you made a bad hiring decision before in your life, and so now you're going to prevent that from making an excellent hire now. And it's unreasonable that you would go through that experience and make the same mistakes again. unless you learn nothing from the way you did it last time and you just do it exactly the same way, which is impossible. It's just not going to work like that. You learn, you said, okay, maybe that job board post didn't really outline the expectations, or, I hired someone based off of a handshake and a resume, and that was probably pretty stupid. Or, I never even called their references. And if I had, I bet I would have found out a couple of crazy things. Or you'll be smarter the next time you do it. And just to kind of close things out here, a lot of this comes back to paralysis by analysis. I will find that most times the clients I work with know what they need to do. They know they need to raise prices. They know they need to produce content. They know they need to fire some of their bad clients. They know they need to create more structure for their engagements to prevent scope creep. They know they need to hire that administrative assistant to get the low level. They know that they should be using outsourcing. They know they should be investing in a workflow management tool once they have their first team member, but it really isn't a great investment when they're a solopreneur because they kind of know what they're doing. They know that certification isn't going to do anything for them, but they feel like that they're not good enough. They know all these things. It's not that you don't know. It's never you actually don't know. It's you're just not doing anything about it. And I'd argue that is the biggest mistake. You know what you should or could be doing, but you keep making the same mistakes. And if I could leave you with one piece of parting wisdom, which is my favorite saying, life will keep teaching you the same lesson until you learn it. If you are going through your 15th tax season, working 100-hour weeks, stop. I just had a client die. Like, stop. It's so sad that we will allow these things to keep happening. And there's no reason for it. None whatsoever. He wasn't even 55. And for what? You can make the changes. You can. You even know what changes you need to make. So please, don't keep making the same mistakes because life is too short for those mistakes to determine where you're going to end up. And that is what I've got for you today before I start crying. Thank you so much for investing your most precious resource with me. I miss you terribly, Fred. And remember that only you can create your dream firm, but we are here to help you every single step of the way. Have a fantastic rest of your workday, everyone. And please, 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 please don't require life to teach you the same lesson more than once. Thanks.